Mancha, and I am the student body coordinator at Cisco Thinkubator ITBHU. Before proceeding any further, I would first like to introduce Cisco Thinkubator. It is a maker space where the country's young mind take their ideas and turn them into working prototypes. It runs a well-structured program called Cohort that provides technical and financial assistance along with support and guidance to budding entrepreneurs. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any question during the workshop, please type them in the chat box, unless directed by Nikhil sir to do otherwise. I'll bring them up during the workshop if necessary, but you need not worry, as we'll also have a separate time for Q&A at the end. Now, without further ado, we will turn the mic over to Nikhil Hegde sir. He is a senior backend developer with over 3 years of experience. Having previously worked with Wipro, he is currently a full-time Django developer at Infilect. Over to you, Nikhil sir. You may continue.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Aman. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, as Aman told, so my name is Nikhil. So currently I'm having 3+ years experience in backend development, including Django and Flask. So in today's session, so we'll be covering the basic Django architecture and how to write the APIs and what is Django admin and how to write the query. All those things will be covered in this 3 days workshop. So I welcome you all to this workshop. So let's get started. Let me share my screen. I hope I am audible to everyone. So if not, you
Yes,
can.
sir, you are completely audible.
Are you able to see my screen? Okay. Yeah. Let's start. So first of all, I want to tell you everyone like what is web framework. So some of you might be already aware and some of you might not. So I'll quickly explain that a bit. So web framework is nothing but a application where we can develop, create, update, and publish all these APIs and our web-related applications, and we can post it into our over the HTTP server. So basically, in Python, we have these many popular web frameworks, and each has its own advantages and disadvantages. So Django is popular in this framework because it's a complex framework and it's a hybrid framework, and also it has a good community support compared to other frameworks. And also, when I got a invitation mail, I also got a question from one of you that to explain the differences between these frameworks, specifically Django and Flask. So that I'm going to take up now. So basically, the main difference of Django and Flask is, so Django is a hybrid framework which has a lot of plug and play systems and batteries included by default. Whereas Flask is a lightweight framework. So it has nothing, it doesn't come up with anything by default, and it's a pretty lightweight. So because of its lightweight nature, Flask is pretty fast compared to Django. I'm not saying that Django is pretty slow, but compared to Flask, it's a bit slow because it comes up with the already plug and play systems and built-in batteries. And also Django works pretty well with relational databases such as Postgres, MySQL, MS SQL Server, etc. Whereas Flask works pretty well with NoSQL databases such as MongoDB and CouchDB. So in mainly Django and Flask are pretty popular, and you can use any of these frameworks. It mainly depends upon your use case. So I request all of you to explore the different frameworks also whenever you get some time. But in this course, I'm going to take up only Django for now. Yeah. So if you want to know the history of Django, so basically Django was developed by a company, a journal called Lawrence Journal. So in 2003, uh, there in that time it was just at the releasing stage and it wasn't available publicly. And when it got licensed in July 2005, yeah, Django Software Foundation took over this Django thing and it released in 2005. And from there onwards, it is still maintaining the development and release cycle. So, so if you observe, if you see in the Stack Overflow or any other websites also, compared to any other framework in Python, Django has pretty good community support because it is getting used by worldwide. Also, it's getting used by top companies also. So there is a good community support available, and it's good for fresher to learn because some of you might be already aware of Python programming language. So for people who are already aware of Python, Django it's a good start to learn because it's easy to learn because all the things will be in Pythonic, everything will be maintained in Pythonic way only. So it will be helpful for you to learn these frameworks. And the current stable version of Django is 3.2.5, which is released in quite recently in April 2021. So now I'm going to tell you the advantages of Django. So if you want to start with Django, you should know what are the advantages that you get in Django, which are not there in some of the other frameworks. So first thing is it's pretty fast because since it comes up with already built-in plug and play features and some batteries default included. So you can straight away get into the development practices without even worrying about setting the basic things because that's what Django will do for you because it takes care of literally everything. You only just have to code, that's it. So that may not be available in some of the other like in admin panel and which you cannot see in other frameworks. Also, it comes up with the built-in authentication authorization technique. So everything will be taken care by Django, and then it's pretty secure. Django is pretty much secure because there is no way that people can point out that there is some issue in Django, like there is some security, like you can do some cross sites, you can do some SQL injection. That I'll be explaining later, like what is the text that you can do and how Django operates it. Basically, Django does all these things. You could think it comes default. And the next thing is it's pretty scalable. So as I told, some top companies, including Instagram, Netflix, all those are using Django internally. So that means that you already know that how much scalable is Instagram, Netflix, how many people use on daily basis. That means it's pretty much scalable. Like it's not like that you cannot use Django for every system. It's not like you can do like include building some scale applications from scratch along with some production scaled application which are inside. That also you can. And so the last thing is it's pretty versatile because since it comes up with plug and play systems and battery included, it's not like that you cannot modify that. Django also provides that option that you can do the modification to existing things however you want. It's up to you. If you don't like the already, if you don't like the feature or if you don't like any plugins that are already that Django has already added, so if you don't like that, you can remove it. Also, you can customize it however you want because Django gives that much of authority to the developers. Coming next, some of the disadvantages. of Django. It's not like it's a huge disadvantages, but compared to few other frameworks, it's yeah, bit of a disadvantage. So first thing is it will not be good for few small scale projects because it comes up with the built-in plugins and batteries, as I told before. In that case, Flask might be the better option for you because it's pretty lightweight. So whenever you choose some framework, choose with your use case. Like if for any particular use case, whether Django suits for you or not. So depending upon that, a developer has to take that option. And as I told before, it's pretty slow in speed compared to Flask because it's bit heavyweight and it might not. If your application is, if you are pretty much concerned about the speed compared to performance and security, then Django might not be the best option for you because Django is pretty heavyweight compared to Flask. So in that case, you might want to take, you might want to choose the Flask. So there is any, if there is doubts, next. Yeah. Yeah. So as I told before, these are the top companies that are getting that use Django. So as I already mentioned, Instagram uses Django as a Spotify. You might be aware of all these companies because you all use these on daily basis. So Spotify, Bitbucket, Dropbox, Mozilla, Pinterest, Washington Post, Eventbrite. So all these big companies that use Django currently. So there is a good future for Django. Yeah. So coming to the technical point of view, uh, uh, first I want to explain how the Django architecture looks like. So basically, Django follows MVT template, MVT architectural template. So you might have heard MVC before, but MVT architecture template that I'll be, you know. So which stands for model, view, and template. So how that works is so the model part is equivalent to your database part. So in the model, you are going to all the information that is with respect to database, such as tables, columns, attributes, and it's pretty much data centric. Whereas in your main business logic, such as queries and optimization of the data and formatting of the data and how to render the data, all those things will be defined in your view. And in the last one, template. So template is the one where you're going to render the response. Like it will be going to determine how the data is going to look like to the end user. And so it's in that's where we're going to take care of the styling part of the data, how the data is going to look like to the end user. So that will be taken care by template. So in total, assume that our enter. Suppose try to send a request from web browser to Django. So then what happens? So that request will be fetched by web browser, and it will be sending it to the URLs. There will be one section called URLs that I will explain later. You just have to remember what each part is going to do, and for each part I'll be explaining later. So whenever there's a request comes from web browser to Django, first it will be going to the URL. So in URLs, what happens is we are going to resolve the URL, like what is the endpoint. And for each endpoint, there will be a one view be mapped. Like if you call the www.something.com slash get user, where your get users will be the URL endpoint, and that will be fetched. And for get user, one view will be mapped, where in that view, you will be doing all the business logic and you will be writing all the business logic, fetch the user list. Assume that get users will fetch the user list that are going to use the application. So URL part will be having the endpoint, and URLs, it will be mapped with one-to-one mapping with view. One URL will be mapped with one view. And in once from URL, once it goes to view, there you will be having all the business logic, like what are you going with this endpoint. When the user calls this endpoint, what are you going to do? That will be defined in your view. And inside the view, sometimes you might want some information from the database. If you want any information from the database, from view, the call will be going to model, where in model you'll be having total uh, uh, information with respect to your databases. So you will be doing some queries to fetch the data from database. And once the data is sent to view from model, it will be going to the template. So in template part, you'll be taking care of the whole styling of the data. How you are going to display that data that you fetched from model to the end user. That will be, that logic will be there in template. So this will be the whole architecture. So once the template is done, then the response is sent back to the web browser. The end user will be going to see the data that is rendered as a template. So that template does that job for you. So this will be the whole architectural diagram. If you have any doubt, you can ask. So for each part, I'll be going to explain next slides. If not, I'll continue.
You may continue, sir.
Okay. I hope there are no questions. Let's continue to the next slide. Yeah. So whatever I have told, I have in a better way. So here that's data. So model for the data from model connected to databases such as MySQL, PostgreSQL, or MS SQL, or SQLite. Any the data can be anything, but model part will be the main key to hold the data. Whereas in view, you will be having your business logic, such as database queries, response format, whatever you're going to write the proper code that will be in your views. Yeah, and in templates, you'll be having static part, so some HTML output as well as dynamic content that you get from database. So basically, it's a HTML CSS file in most of the. Yeah, so let's explain one by one. First, I'll try to explain how the models will look like. So in models, it's a Python class. So basically, it's a Python class, and that we are going to inherit from Django.db.models. So from where there will be the main business logic, and from that class we'll be going to inherit. So here, and each attribute of the model, like columns, you may call it as columns. So that will be represented as a database field. So here I have given one example. So here, if you can see that class person models.model, that means I am creating a table inside the database named as person. So assuming that I already have the database, and inside the database I'm creating a table called person, and this class will always going to inherit from models.model. That you have to remember. And inside this class I have written what is the attribute? What are the attributes of this table? So I have given two attributes, which are first name and last name. So please remember, the person will be the table name, and first name and last name will be the attributes of the table. And I am also, for first name, I'm going to write what type of this, attribute, whether it's character, integer, or it's a datetime field, or it's a URL, that we can specify by this sentence, models.char field. That means if I specify it as a char field, that means it's always varchar, character type of data. That means first name will only hold character type data, which having, so I am also giving argument to this char field function, which say max length. That means for this character field, the maximum length the first name can hold is only 30. You cannot insert the data to first name having length of more than 30. So
in the architecture diagram, so I'll be going to extend each part one by one. So the first one will be models. So in models, so it will be a class, Python class that inherits from Django.db.models. So it acts as a subclass. And each attribute of the model that represents a database field. So in this below example, you can see that I have added a class called person. That means, assuming that I have connected to the database, I am creating a table inside the database, naming a name called as person, which inherits from this models.model subclass. So inside this person class, I'll be adding two attributes. That means inside the person table, I am creating two columns, two attributes, such as first name and last name. And for each of the attribute, I'm also defining what's the type of that attribute. What is the type of field, whether it's a varchar or whether it's a integer, whether it's a datetime field, all those things I have to specify while defining the attribute. So here, if you see for first name, I am specifying models.char field. That means char field means it can hold only character type of data, varchar data. And also for this char field function, I'm passing the argument such as max length, that is equal to 30. That means first name will be a varchar field and it can hold data which is having on max length 30. That means it will not hold the data which is having the characters more than 30. So if you try to insert any data, any first name which is having a max length greater than 30, then Django will automatically throw the insertion error. So you don't have to do anything, it will automatically throw the error. So it will do that. So that's why you are defining this max length argument, so that you are doing data validation inside the model itself. So you don't have to do the validation manually from your side. Also, similarly for last name also, I'm defining it as char field and the max length will be 30. To the same thing. So if you write the table like this in models.py, after it's converted to database call, it looks similar to like this. So it will be your database query, equivalent database query. So whatever I did in the previous slide, that is equivalent in database, which is as create table person, ID, primary key, first name varchar of 30, not null, last name varchar of 30, not null. So this is the database equivalent query. So here, if you see that along with first name and last name, there is one more attribute, which is ID. If you see in the below slide, I haven't written ID anywhere, but still you can see that ID is inserted in the create table SQL call. So you might be wondering how that's happening, because Django will automatically insert ID key for each table, even if you not write it. So this will be taken care by Django itself. So ID will be automatically inserted to this database and it acts as a primary key. So this will be the primary key of your table, and all the other things what you'll be entering, that will be normal attributes. So if you want to, so in case if you want to insert in any other attribute as a foreign key, then you can override this also. So Django gives that option to you also. So it's not mandatory like ID will be always inserted automatically and ID will be the primary key. So by default, it does like that. If you want to override that, you can do that also. You can remove the ID and you can insert some other attribute as a primary key also. That is also possible. Yeah, so speaking of attributes, so these many type of fields that are supported in Django. And there are many other fields also. So these are the majority of the fields that we will be using in most of the projects. So first one will be a Boolean field that you already aware. It can hold only true or false. And the second one, as I explained, char field. So it will hold only the text-based data. And the third one will be file field. So this field will be mainly used to store the files. Suppose if there is any table called user, and in that in the table there might be an attribute called profile photo, which can store only the image. So in that case, to store that image, you have to define that profile photo attribute as a file field. Otherwise, it cannot hold that image. So the file field will be mainly used to store the files. And the fourth one will be datetime field. So the main use of the datetime field is storing the timestamp related data, such as what is the created time of the thing or what is the deleted time. So suppose if you want to store the timestamp of any event, you can store it as a datetime field. And next one will be integer field. So this also you might be already aware. So it can hold only integer data. So the next one is float field. This also you are aware. Float field can hold only floating point numbers. And this one you might not aware, UID field. So this is mainly used to store the unique identifiers, such as like, so if you don't know what is UID, I'll explain. So UID is a 32 character unique string, consists of characters as well as integers. So it consists both string as well as integers, and it generates the 32 length of characters, which we can use as a primary key in some cases. Suppose assume that you are creating a table and you know that table can store lakhs of rows. Like there might be entry of lakhs of rows or crores of rows. So if you want to store that many type of that much huge amount of data, then your primary key should be UID field. Because if your primary key is anything like integer field or character field, it cannot hold that much many number of rows, because after one point there will not be any primary key to generate, because everything will be... Hello?
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think your screen has frozen.
Okay.
Like it's on the like the SQL query screen, it's still showing that.
Yeah. So do you want me to explain this again, or shall I move to next slide? This I think might be straightforward for you.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Let's go to next thing. So different types of relationship that we might encounter in Django. So you might be knowing relationship before in SQL. Otherwise, I'll explain once again. So the relationship is nothing but like suppose if you are creating a two tables which are mutually inclusive, like there is some type of link between two tables, such as assume that you have one table called a book and another table called as author. So there is a common link between author and book table, which means one author can write multiple books. So you have to store that author related information in the books table. And so that means there is a one-to-many relationship between author and books because one author can write multiple books. So this is called as a relationship. So relationship is nothing between link between two different tables. So in this slide, so we'll be going to encounter like what are the possible types of relationship that can happen. So first one is one-to-one relationship. So which is like from one record of the table, it should map only one record from the another table. That I'll give example for this. So assume that you have a table called user and there's one more table called profile. So in Facebook and Instagram, every social media site you might be aware, so there will be a profile section. So assume that you have a table for that and there is one more table for storing the basic username, password, all those things for user table. So here you can see that for each user there should be a profile. There will be a profile, but one user can have only one profile. One user cannot have multiple profile. Also, one profile cannot be owned by multiple users. So if you see, the relationship is one-to-one. One user can have only one profile. So for this kind of relationship we will call it as one-to-one relationship, because one record from one table will map to only one record from another table. There will not be one-to-many mapping. Yeah, I hope this is clear. Next, I'll move to one-to-many relationship. So one-to-many relationship is nothing but, as I explained just now, so author and books table. So assume that you have two different tables, author and book. So there is a one-to-many relationship from author to book, because one author can write multiple books. It's not like one author can write only one book, or one book can be written only by one author. So there is a one-to-many relationship. I hope you're getting it, because this is the main key things while you creating your tables, all those things. You should be aware of relationship. So this author and book table examples are pretty good for one-to-many relationship, because as I explained before, one author can write multiple books. So it's a one-to-many relationship. And yeah, so next, many-to-many relationship. So many-to-many relationship means from many records of the same table can reference into many records into the another table. That means there will not be one-to-many mapping. So if I have to give example, assume that there is one table called student, where we store all the student related data. And assume that there is one more table called teacher, where we store all the teacher related data. Suppose if you see the relationship in this, one teacher can teach to many students. So from teacher to student, it's a one-to-many relationship. But if you want to look at through from student perspective, one student can be taught by multiple teachers. So if you see, there is one-to-many mapping from both the tables. So one student also can be taught from multiple teachers, as well as one teacher can also student multiple students. So this is called as many-to-many relationship. So there is nothing like one-to-many mapping will be there. Here, all the records can map to any records of the another table. So that's why we call it as many-to-many relationship. So these are the three types of relationship that we will going to encounter while we create the models. So if you have any confusions or any doubt, you can ask now only, because it's pretty much important. I'll wait for some time if I get any questions. Otherwise, I'll go move to next slide. Okay, fine. I'll go to next slide. If you're not able to see the next slide, please let me know. Yeah, so URL patterns in Django. So in this thing, we are going to learn how to write the URLs and how to map with views. So in Django's, views are nothing but just a Python functions. As I explained before, whenever you receive a request from a web browser, that will straight away come to your URL file, where you'll be having one-to-one mapping from one URL to one view. So here, if you can see the example, I have written the URL patterns, how it looks like. So inside URL patterns will be a list of all the URLs. And for each URL, I'll be mapping one view. So here, if you can see that there is one URL called books/. That means, suppose your base server URL is, assume that you have www.google.com. Assume that if that is your server, if you enter www.google.com/books/, then if you try to hit enter, then straight away that will be going to resolve by this URL. It will come to straight away to this URL, and once it comes to this URL, it will search for what is the view that is mapped with. So the view name is get all books. That's a Python function name that I've given. So once it finds the view that is mapped with this URL, it will straight away goes to the views.py file where all the views will be written. So it will search for where is that get all books view is there. Once it finds that get all books view, then it will go to inside that view and it will try to resolve what is the, if you have written any business logic inside that get all books, it is going to process that. So this is the use case of the URL, having URLs. So it just acts like a resolver, URL resolver. It will just act like a bridge between your request and the views. So it will fetch the URL from the web browser and it will point it out to the view. So for the same, so after this thing, so there comes the views part. So here I'm going to explain what happens once you enter that URL comes, and once that URL is resolved by view, and what happens, it goes to that view. What happens inside that view? That will be going to be covered in this slide. So a view function is nothing but, it's just a Python function, which takes the Python web request and it returns the HTTP response. That's the only use case of the view. It will take the HTTP request from the web browser and it will be going to do some processing and it will return the HTTP response. That's it. So here if you see inside this view, we are doing, I'm not doing any processing. I'm just printing what is the current time and that I'm going to render it as HTTP response. I'm creating HTML file and that I'm going to render as HTTP response. So if you do like this, I'm going to show how it looks like in your web browser. Assume that your URL is /, so there is nothing but. So basically Django runs on 8000 port in your localhost. So you all know that localhost address is 127.0.0.1. So once the Django server is up in your web browser, in your local host, it will be always be running on 8000 port by default. Please remember this. So once, if you configure this thing, and if you try to enter this URL, I'm going to show how the response will be looks like. So first it will go to slash, and it will check what is the view that mapped with that slash. So once it finds this view, the previous view, it will be going to process all these things. What is the current date time? So here I'm fetching the current date time. I'm just printing time is current date time. And that I'm going to render as HTTP response. So once you enter this in a browser, you will be able to see this kind of output. Time is what is the current time. So this will be the output it looks like. So this is a whole request and response cycle. So once you send the request, it will first go to the URLs. From URLs, it will fetch the views. What is the corresponding view? And from views, it will go and render the HTTP response, rendered by template. Yeah, so next I'll be going to cover templates. So this is the last thing. So that will be in the request response cycle. So template, as I explained before, template is nothing but a HTML file. So in the most of the cases, it will be a HTML file that is going to render the output in however you want, in the user requested format. So in Django, there's already pre-built template engine which can parse the HTML, CSS, JavaScript content, and it can render the template however you want. So if you know the basic HTML, CSS thing, it will be pretty easy for you. Otherwise, you can learn HTML, CSS, and you can create your own template. So here, assume that, so in Python, you can pass the dynamic content as I explained before. So in your views, you will be doing processing of the data, right? So in that processing of the data also includes fetching the data from database by writing some few queries. So in that case, what happens is your views will go to models, views will call models.py. From models, you will fetch, you will do the query, and you will get the data. And once you get the data, that dynamic data, you will be rendering it in the template. So to render that data in template, so as I informed before, so I had created a table called person, which was having first name and last name. So assume that in view, I have queried in that table, and I have got the first name of one person and also the last name of one person. Assume that I have got that information from the database. So given you have already got the information from the database, how do you want to render that information in the template? The pretty easy way is rendering like this. So assume that you have stored that first name in a variable called first name and last name in a variable called last underscore name. So if you want to create a template that is going to render the dynamic data, this is how it is going to be look like. So all the variables will be encapsulated by flower brackets, 2 flower brackets. So if you write it like this, so where I have written in bold letters, right? So this will be treated by Django as a variable parsing. So if you write something inside this flower brackets, that is going to be treated as a variable by Django. So here, output of this template will be my first name is and the value of the first name variable. Assume that if you have inserted a row in a person table called first name will assume that my name Nikhil and last name will be Hegde. So the total output will be my first name is Nikhil and my last name will be Hegde, like this. Here you will see if you pass first name as John and last name as Doe from your view, it will be rendered as my first name is John and my last name is Doe inside your template. So this is how you should send variables from views to template. Then only that dynamic data will be getting rendered in your templates. So template is nothing but it's just a HTML file. You can include all the static data, all this CSS, all this JavaScript content, however you want. The only way you have to include the dynamic content, such as variables from databases, is a way like this, as I explained before. So this I am going to cover when I go show some practical examples. I'll be going to cover how it looks like. Yeah. So here I have given one example. So assume that this geeks view is your view name, which so here I'm passing some static data. I'm not doing any query inside the database, but here I'm passing some static data, such as I'm passing one string and I'm passing one list to the template. The template name is geeks.html. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm inside my view and I have got some data. It may be from database query or it may be static data. Anything can be done. So once I got the data, I'm rendering it to the geeks.html template. I'm passing this context. So this will be stored in context dictionary, right? And this I'm passing it to the geeks.html template. So after this, from view, the call will be going to template. So here I'm just define some HTML tags. So this is not a complete HTML file. This is just how I'm parsing the data. So here, if you can see that I'm printing data is data, which I have got from this data key. That means the value of the data will be GFG is the best. And so since it is a list of integers, I cannot display it directly in the HTML because HTML will not be knowing the list data because it's a Python specific data type, right? So HTML might not be knowing. HTML knows only integer and character. So to make it understandable to the HTML, you shouldn't print it as it is, as list. So what you should do is, so I'm creating a for loop inside the HTML. So this is the syntax of creating a loop. If you create two flower brackets and if you have written some variable name, that means that it's a variable parsing. But instead of that, if you create only single flower bracket and enter percentage on both the sides, then it will be treated as loop. So here you can create any type of loop like for loop, while loop, do while, anything you can do. In this example, I'm using for loop for I in list. So list will be my variable name. So this is the list. The value will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm iterating through this list. I am printing one by one of this I. So here you can see that I have written inside two flower brackets. That means it's a variable. I will be the variable, and the first iteration I value will be 1, and the last iteration I value will be 10. So once everything is done, you need to explicitly specify that for loop is done by this syntax. Flower bracket, percentage, and then you have to write end for. That means it will be treated as for loop. So Django can know that the for loop is ended. So once you do this in your views and template, the output will be going to look like this. So here I'm printing data is GFG is the best, and here I'm printing list is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the bullets will be here. I have given UL tag. This will be unordered list. If you give UL tag, it will be printed like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this will be your template data, and this will be going to render to your end user. So once you hit the request from your web browser, you will see this kind of output. you will get to see this kind of output. If you write your views and template like I mentioned. So this completes the one whole request and response cycle. So once the template is rendered in your browser UI, that means that request cycle is completed. Yeah, if you have any doubts in this whole thing, models, views, and templates, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll continue the next slide. Please feel free to ask any doubts if you don't understand. Okay, I hope everyone are clear. Let me go to the next slide. Yeah, so now since you are already aware of this whole request and response cycle, we'll be getting covered static and media files. So first we'll understand what is static files and what is media file. So static files are nothing but these are the files that are generated by Django itself. So it is not like you are adding something or you are creating by yours some files inside that. It's not like that. It's few static files that you generate from your side, so from Django side itself to render data. So that we call it as static files. So by default, Django will generate these static files, but it will not specify like where to store that static files. So that we have to specify from our side. So to do that, there are two options. So one is there is a command called static URL, and there's a variable called static root. These two things you need to specify. So static URL is nothing but what will be the URL of that static to get the static file. So if you enter it as static, that means if you write your base URL like www.google.com/static, if you enter that, then you'll be going to get all the static files that Django has generated. And static root will be, assume that this base directory is base directory will be the current directory where you have working. And static root will be that it will create a static folder in the current directory, and it will store all the static files inside that static folder. So this is just nothing but storing and managing the static files properly inside your application. And whereas media files, so media files are these are not generated by Django. These are actually the files that are uploaded by the end user to the system. So as I mentioned before, right? So while I was explaining the file field, I mentioned like if you have a table called user, and there's one more, if there's an attribute called profile photo, that will always expect the file field. So once you create the table like that, if you have profile photo as a file field, then whenever the user uploads his profile photo, that will be treated as a media file because it is uploaded by the end user. So these media files are always this, we have to handle it properly because these are the files that are added by end user. So we have to treat it special, very special. Like we have to provide proper security to these media files. We should avoid like leaking these files and all because these are uploaded by the end user. So data is always should be secured. So to do that, Django provides the same way as static file. It also provides two more variables such as media URL, media root. It is also same way as I explained for static URL and static root. So media URL means what will be the URL to get the media data, and media root will be where that will be stored inside your application. It will be stored in current directory. In current directory, it will create a folder called media, and it will store all the end user related data inside that media file. So basically one thing is, so we shouldn't mix these static files and media files. It should be stored separately. That is the ideal way of doing development. Now let's go to the database part. So you will be already aware of that database necessary to develop any kind of application, because that's where all the data is going to be stored. So choosing the database is pretty much important. It's same as choosing your web framework. You also should be careful while choosing your databases. So first we will explore what are the different type of databases available. So in higher level, there are only major two different types of databases are there, which are relational and non-relational. So this you might be aware already, but I'm going to explain again. So relational databases are nothing but MySQL, PostgreSQL, MS SQL, all these are relational databases. So the use cases of relational databases are, so here you will be having some proper table structure. That means your data is pretty much structured into multiple categories, such as you will be creating some table, and inside that you will be defining what is the attribute for each table and what is the data type for each attribute. All these things will be defined in relational databases. According to that, the data will be getting stored. And here also in relational databases, you can easily manage the data, because you know, right, how to store, how are you storing the data, because you have already created the schema for relational databases. And also in relational databases, it provides links like relationship that I explained before, one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many. These type of relationships will be provided in relational databases that we can easily track between different data points. Whereas in non-relation, if I have to give example, one is MongoDB and another is CouchDB and Redis. Redis is also a non-relational database. So here the main properties of the non-relational databases are, here the data is not at all having some structured form. In relational databases, you will be defining, right? Like this will be my table, and these are my attributes, and each attribute will be having proper data type, whether it's a varchar, integer. There will be nothing in non-relational databases. It's just a JSON type of data. That means dictionary kind of data. Each data will be having one key and one value. You can insert however you want the data. And the advantage of this is the querying of the data is pretty much faster, because there is no proper schema and there are no joins. There is no relationship like such as one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. Everything is just a JSON. You are fetching the data from JSON, literally. So that's why it's pretty much faster than relational databases. But the disadvantage is like, so here the data will not be in structured form. So in that case, what happens is, if you, in relational databases, the SQL itself will do the validation part. Suppose assuming that if you have created a attribute as varchar, and as I explained before, if you create a varchar as max length of 30, and if you're trying to insert some other type of data, such as integer or date time into that same attribute field, the SQL relational databases will not allow that, because you have already defined the schema for that. It will take only varchar type of data, that too having length less than 30. But in NoSQL databases, that is not at all there. So you have to do your own validations while inserting the data. If you don't do any validation and if you're trying to insert the data, that means your data might get corrupted, because there will be no validation coming from NoSQL side. Everything you have to do by your own. If you don't do it properly, that means your data will be pretty much corrupted, and you cannot extract any useful information from that data. So this is a huge risk. So if you are not aware of doing proper validations, then you cannot handle NoSQL databases properly. You should be aware of how to do your own validations. Also, the advantage is the speed will be pretty much faster than relational databases, because the extracting the data is pretty easy, because you don't have to do any query at all. is just a JSON object. From JSON, you are fetching the data. Yeah. So in this example, we'll be using SQLite, which is a relational database. So I'll explain why we'll be using SQLite in the example project that I'll be going to show next. So SQLite is a relational database, as I explained. So it's pretty lightweight, like compared to PostgreSQL, MySQL, and MS SQL, all those things. Compared to those SQL databases, it is pretty lightweight. And also, there is one more thing, like if you want to configure MySQL or PostgreSQL, if you want to configure any MySQL or PostgreSQL databases, then you have to create a server for databases. It has to run as a process. Otherwise, it will not be get started. But the advantage of SQLite is you don't have to need any server or any process to do that. It just stores everything inside the file. One file dump will be there. It will store every data inside that file dump. And it doesn't require any server process. That means you no need to start, no need to resume, no need to stop. Nothing can be done. You can insert the data at any point of time. But whereas in the other SQL databases, that you have to take care of these server processes. You have to set up properly, and you need to manage these processes. So in SQLite, there will not be any overhead to manage this because it's a pretty lightweight. So the main advantage of the SQLite is if you're trying to do any small scale project, personal project, then SQLite is pretty much helpful, super helpful, because you don't have to, you will not be having any overhead to set up all these things. And Django does that for you. Whenever you create a new project in Django, by default, it will be pointing to SQLite database only. But if you don't want that SQLite, you can change it. You can change also. That also Django gives flexibility. That also you can do. But by default, it will be SQLite. And the another advantage is, so it's portable. So as I explained before, it stores all the data in a file format. So if you want to export that file, you just have to copy that file, and you have to just have to take that file and copy it in any system. It will work because it's just a file. But unlike in other databases, it will not be stored as a single file. It will be stored as a large batch of separate files. So porting that data will be pretty difficult compared to SQLite. SQLite is pretty simple. Like you just have to copy paste that file. That's it. Yeah, so that's the reason we are using SQLite in this project, because it's pretty much good to do any kind of small scale projects. Yeah, as I in the previous slide, I have explained the advantages, right? The same way it also has some few of the disadvantages. So one thing is, so there will not be like multiple processes will be running in the database. You cannot make multiple queries at the same point, because it will be having only one process, and you have to do only one person can make the query at any given point of time. And that will be good actually to, if you are doing any small scale project or multiple small scale project, which is personal project, then you don't require this concurrency and all. And another disadvantage is, so in every database management, in every database system, there will be one section called user management. So you can provide access to each user. You can create multiple users, and you can give access, different types of access, such as read access, write access, modify access, all those things. It will be done properly in this other database management system. But since in SQLite is a pretty small, it just reads or writes from the just a file, there will be no user management at all. So everything has to be done from your side only. So the last thing is, so yeah, so since it's just a file, anyone can modify this file. So there will not be any security. So that's why no one uses SQLite in production databases. It is only good for beginners to set up their project and work in Django and do the things and explore. It's just for exploration purpose and just for the personal projects. But you shouldn't use SQLite anywhere in production databases. For production, you should always use MySQL or PostgreSQL or MS SQL, any of the large databases. So yeah, this is about SQLite. Yeah, so right now, now we can try setting up few things by our own, and we can start, we can have some few small projects, and we can try to do how to do the setup. I'll try to create one small application now, and I will see whether I can explain from doing the practical example. You can also do whenever I'm doing, it's up to you, or else you can also note down like what are the different commands I'm using. So I hope everyone are able to see my terminal. So if yes, please can anyone let me know if you are able to see my terminal or not?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay, fine, thanks. So right now, so now I'll be going to set up one small application. You can follow with me, or else you can take the command notes. Anything is fine. So let's start. Okay. So first thing you want to do while creating an application is creating the virtual environment. So you might not be aware what is virtual environment. I'll explain. So virtual environment is just a virtual state of the application where we can install different packages. So the advantage of the virtual environment is like, so you might be running multiple projects in the same system, right? But the dependency will be different for each project. Like you'll be installing different plugins in one project, and that might not be required for another project. So to tackle this, what we should do is, for every project, while creating that project, you should create a virtual environment first, and you should run that project inside that virtual environment, so that all the packages, plugins, everything you install, that will be only applicable inside that virtual environment. It will not be available outside that virtual environment. It will not be available in the global. So that is the main advantage of having virtual environment. So I'll explain, I'll write the commands that to create virtual environments. So first thing is, first you have to install, I hope all of you might have installed pip, which is a Python package manager that I'm assuming by default. Otherwise, you can follow in Google, or you can refer any thread like how to install pip. So assuming that you already have pip, you have to install virtual env first by this command, pip install virtual env. So since I have already installed virtual env, it's giving a requirement already satisfied. But once you execute this command, that virtual env package will be installed in your system. So once it is installed, then what you have to do is you have to create a new environment by this command, virtual env. Then what is the environment name? So right now I'll give it as test. Yeah. So once I do execute this command, there will be one, if you do ls, there is one file will be created. This is my environment name, test. So right now environment is created. Once this environment is created, you need to activate it, this environment. by using this command. By this command, source your virtual environment name, then bin activate. So once you execute this command, here left side you can see that my virtual environment is activated. So if you are able to see like this your virtual environment name, that means your virtual environment has been activated. Otherwise, if you face any issues, that means your virtual environment is not at all activated properly. So right now my virtual environment is activated, and I'm checking are there any packages already in this virtual environment by this command pip freeze. So right now there are no packages. So first I have to install Django using this command pip install Django. So it's getting installed right now. Yeah, it's done. So if you do execute pip freeze again, it will show that we have already installed Django, which is version having 2.2.24, and it has some package dependency. It has installed the other two packages also. So once this is done, so once the Django is installed, it will automatically enable one command called Django admin. So this will be enabled automatically. So if you click on Django admin and press enter, you can see that what are the different set of subcommands that are available in Django admin. So in this, you might not require all of them. I'll explain a few. So first one is creating a new project. To do that, you need to use start project command, this one. So you have to use Django admin, start project, and you should enter your project name. I will enter it as bookstore, just for my reference. So once it is done, if you click ls, that means bookstore is created. That means this is your project, bookstore project, and test is your virtual environment name. So I'll go to bookstore. I'll do ls. So here, if you can see that it has Django has already created few things here. So I'll explain one by one. First is manage.py. So this is the main file. So manage.py will be taking care Django specific file, which takes care of all the server up and running and all doing the migrations of the data, pushing it to the database. Everything will be taken care by this manage.py file. You don't have to change anything in this file. It will do automatically for you. So if you try to do Python manage.py --help, it will show what are the set of subcommands that are available. So this we will be using later. So these are the different types of subcommands available inside manage.py. You don't want to know everything, only few things are necessary. Yeah. So right now you have successfully created the project. Okay, the project is done. So right now you need to create sub-project, all those things. Like inside this project, you have to create some few sub-projects, which we call as apps inside Django. Apps are nothing but like just creating few set of things and having it in a similar folder. So this is just up to you. You can create one app, single app, and you can create all the things inside that single app. Or you can create multiple apps and you can distribute the data across multiple apps. That's up to you. There is no hard-coded rule like that. You have to create only these many apps. There's nothing. So you can create one app also. You can create n number of apps also. So that's up to you. So now I'll try to create one app. Python 3 manage.py. So we'll be using this command, start app. Start app. I'll give the app name as book. So once I do ls, so here you can see that book is already created. So this we will explore. What are the things that are there in books? So here I'm going to open this in Atom. So here you can see that this is my project name. Bookstore is my project name and book is my app name. So if you open Bookstore, there are few things that are already there created by Django itself. So here you can see one you are already familiar. This is urls.py. So this, as I already explained, this will be important to handle the request and mapping with some views. So this URL pattern will be the list of all the URLs. So whenever you create a new view, you need to add it here and you need to map with some URL like this. So assuming that I have created one view, here I can map that URL with that view. Here I'll be giving. Hello. Are there any questions? Is there any confusion?
No, sir, you could continue. It may have been unintentional.
Okay, sure. Okay, I hope everyone are clear till now. So here, the same way as I explained in slides, I can create one view with any view name and I can map it some URL. So this is the place where I should do the URL to view mapping. So this I will do later. That it be like this. And this is the use case of urls.py. And there is one more thing called settings.py. So here there is everything with respect to your project, all the settings that you'll be having, everything will be stored in this settings.py. So there are already few things that Django has added that I'll explain one by one. So first one is secret key. So this is created by Django itself. So here they have given a comment like keep the secret key in production secret. That means this key we should not expose anywhere outside. We should keep it as secret because this is the key that Django uses to create some password encryption. It might be some hashing. If there is any hashing or encryption is needed, this secret key acts as a salt to that encryption thing. So we shouldn't ever expose the secret key outside. We should keep it as inside the environment itself. It's not if we should expose the secret key, then there might be some security leaks. So you should handle it properly. And there is one more thing called allowed host. So here you can enter all the host names that you want the request should come from. Suppose if I enter www.google.com, then Django will automatically allow any request that comes from www.google.com. Or if I enter something like if I have some domain like myapp.in where I hosted this project. So if I enter like this, then Django will allow only from these two allowed. safety concern that Django has enforced. Only whatever host you will enter inside allowed host, only from those hosts you can send the request. Okay, and so installed apps. So in installed apps, you should enter, you should give all the apps that are created by you. So here you can see that I have already created one app called Book. So whenever you create a new app, that you should add it in your installed apps so that Django can recognize you have created one app. So there are already few entries in this installed apps. So this you shouldn't be get worried of, because these are Django specific installed apps. These are getting handled by Django only. And this is the app that is created by you. Okay. And there is another section called middleware. So this is specifically for security purposes. So once you get some request and once you send the response, what are the things that are going to happen inside? Everything will be taken care by middleware. So here you can see that security middleware, which is mainly for security purposes. This you might not want to know in detail, but these are the few middlewares Django will be having by default. That's why we call Django as plug and play battery, because everything it does for you from beginning itself. So you don't have to set anything from your side. Okay. And here you can see that what's the URL conf, which we have which Django has given as bookstore.urls. That means this file, bookstore. Inside bookstore, this is urls.py. Because anytime if you want to resolve any URL, that means Django is telling that you should point to bookstore.urls. This you can change if you want. Otherwise, keep it as it is. And the next one is templates. So here you can see that this is all with respect to the template settings that Django has given. So here Django has already some pre-built-in templates, which we can extract from this path, Django templates. Suppose if you don't like these templates, if you want to add some different templates, such as Jinja 2, or there are multiple template plugins available in Django. If you want to insert that, then you can remove this line and you can add your own template packet. You can insert any type of template. By default, it will be pointed to Django templates. Okay, then next, yeah, this is the main thing. So here you will see that one section called databases. So if you see, by default, it will be pointed to SQLite 3, which I have explained before. By default, it will always be pointed to SQLite database. But you shouldn't use this SQLite in production. This is only useful in doing some personal project or small scale project, because I have already explained the advantages and disadvantages. So right now we can keep it as SQLite 3, but please remember this shouldn't get used in production. For production, you should use MySQL or any PostgreSQL, any proper databases. So right now we can keep as it is. And these are some password validators that Django has already added. Like there is one minimal length validator. Suppose if you want to create any user with username and password, there should be some like minimal length should be there for password and username. That will be handled by this minimum length validator. And common password validator, numeric password validator. This will be used if you write only numeric integers in passwords. So this validator will check for that. So like this, there are multiple types of validators are there. These are taken care by Django itself. And this is with respect to time zone and language specific data. So if you want your language to be in English, then you can use this English US. Otherwise, if you want any different language, if you want to doing it for some regional projects for some different regions or different languages, you can use any different languages. And time zone also, it will be by default, it will be UTC. If you want it to be IST, then you can do it. You can change it to IST also. That is also possible. Okay, then yeah. So this I mentioned, right? Static URL. By default, it will be pointing to static root. Static. So yeah, this will be done by Django itself. So if you don't want it to be in static, you can change it. You can point it to some other directory also. That also can be done. So this settings.py mainly holds all the settings and configurations for your project. So if you want to change anything with respect to configuration, you have to change it in settings.file itself. So currently I have done one change. That is, I have added this book app to installed apps so that Django can recognize that I have created one book app. That's it. Yeah, so this is all with respect to settings file. Okay, if there is no other doubt, I will move to the next app section. Okay. Okay, I'll go to the app section. So this is the app I have created. So here you can see that all the files that I mentioned before, models.py, where we'll be writing all the database related stuffs. So you should always write it in models.py. These all are the files created by Django itself. You don't have to do anything. Whenever you enter that command, Python manage.py startup book, all these files will be created by Django itself. You don't have to do anything. Okay, so here they have mentioned create your models here. So all the tables, everything should be entered only in this file. You shouldn't enter it in any other file. Please remember. Okay. And so here you can see views.py. So all the things, all the business logic, views function that you're going to write, you should enter it only in this file. Similar to models.py. So each file has its own purpose. You shouldn't mix or change these things. You should write it in only these files. This is a hardcode restriction. Like you shouldn't create any new file also. You shouldn't enter it in some other file also. You should write it in same file. All the models database related stuffs will go to models.py, and all the business logic view functions will go in views.py. Okay. And the test.py is not needed, because here you will be writing your unit test cases, all these things. That is not needed for now. And apps.py also, it's already configured by Django. You shouldn't change anything in apps.py. And admin.py, this I'll be going to explain after some time. So here you'll be registering all these models to admin interface. That I will explain a bit later. So here, yeah, so right now what we can do is, okay, so you have created one app successfully. Let's try to run whether your setting, whatever you have done till now, is it working or not. First, what I'll do is manage.py run server. So if everything is proper, then it will show that, yeah, it will start one development server in the localhost. As I explained before, it will open the port. It will always run on 8000 port. So here you can see that everything is proper. So it has created development server on this endpoint. So if I click on that, ideally you should see this screen. That means Django will render this screen by default. That means the install worked successfully. Congratulations. That means whatever till now, whatever you have done, everything is perfect. So this is just an indication by Django that's letting you know that everything, whatever you have done till now, is perfect. You can proceed next. Okay. So here you can see that everything is fine. Now, what I'll be doing is, I'll do make migration. So this make migration command is useful. So it's like whenever you create new table in models.py, so your SQLite DB will not be knowing like you have created one table in your models.py. To inform that you have created one table successfully, you need to run this command, make migrations, which will inform your DB as you have created a table and you want to apply those changes to database. Because right now, whatever you have done, that will be only specific to Django, but your SQLite will not be knowing anything with respect to that. So by running this make migrations command, you are explicitly telling SQLite DB that I have created one table, and you should make the changes in database like this. And once you run, so right now I haven't created any table. That's why it's saying that no changes detected. Okay. And once you assume that you have created one table or something, let's try now. I'll try to create one table. The same way I have mentioned in the slides. I'll create one person table. So tables are nothing but class in Django. Please remember. So as explained in the slide, I'm inheriting from models.model subclass. All the models should be inherited from this models.model only. And this is my table name. So I'll create author, not person. Because since this app is mainly with respect to the bookstore, I'll create author. Then I'll add the same things. First name, models.char field, and you have to specify what's the max length. I'll specify 30, and I will also specify like what should be the default value.
Hello, I think your screen got stuck again on the terminal.
Okay, just a minute. Yeah, sorry for this inconvenience, guys. It's a Wi-Fi problem. Please let me know if anything happens again. Okay, so can you see my screen now? Can you see my item window now? Where
Yes,
I'm in
yes.
models.py.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, fine. So as you have seen in the slides, the same way I'm creating the table right now, whatever I have explained before. So I will just quickly recap. So I have created one table called author, and I am creating one attribute inside this table, which is called as first name. And the data type will be char field. It will be having max length as 30, and the default value will be empty. Like if you don't specify anything, it will consider it as empty. First name will be empty like this. And again, the same thing, I'll create last name. Here also I will do the same thing. Okay. Then I will create one more attribute, age. This models dot integer field, because age is always integer. And here also you need to specify what should be the default value. If you don't specify the age, default I will be keeping it as null. Okay, let it be like this. And right now I have created my table, and I'm informing my SQLite DB explicitly that I have created this table by running this command python manage.py make migration. So here you can see that it has given me some output. Like so here you can see that it has created that model, create model author. It's executed, and it has created one migration file. So right now what happened is, so I have informed my SQLite DB that I will be creating one table, and according to that, Django has created one migration file. But right now, these changes are not yet applied to database. It has only created that migration file. So if you can see that there is one file created in this directory, book migrations 0001 initial.py, that I will open now. So here you can see that the migrations directory will be already there, created by Django. And here, so this is the file that is just now got created by Django. So here you can see that timestamp will be there. It has got created just now, generated by Django. Okay, so this is a migration file that we call. So the reason the file got created is, so SQLite DB, the DBs will not understand directly if you Python classes. That's why you need to create the file, migration file, so that the databases can understand what they have to do. So here in the migration file, you don't have to understand anything in this file because this will be automatically created by Django. So I'm just informing, I'm just letting you know what are the things that is happening in this migration file. So here there's one operations list will be there. Here it's doing create model command. It's executing create model, which is equivalent to create table command in SQL. Okay, and name will be author. Fields will be, as I mentioned in PPT earlier, the ID field will be automatically added by Django, and by default it will be the primary key. So this, if you see in models.py, I haven't added anywhere ID. So this ID will be automatically generated by Django itself. And all the remaining things is similar to whatever I have mentioned: first name, last name, and age. Okay, this is my migration file. Okay, right now we have created our table, and we have also created migration file so that it can be understandable by SQLite DB. So the next step is you have to apply the changes to database. So to apply those changes, what you have to do is you have to run python manage.py migrate. So this is the command. Please remember all these commands because these are essentially, you will be doing these commands, executing these commands multiple times in your projects. That's why. So you should know all these commands like make migrations, migrate, and run server. Run server is try to up the server. And make migration is used to create the migration file. Migrate is used to apply the changes to database. So if you run this thing, so here you can see that. So ignore all these things, these migrations. These are applied by Django specific migrations. These are admin level migrations. These are not at all required for you. So here you can see one more, at the last you can see one line, applying book 001.initial. So this is the migration file I had created manually. So here you are saying that, okay, if you are able to see, okay, that means your migration has been applied successfully. That means the changes are reflected in SQLite DB, and it has actually created an author table inside the SQLite DB. If you get any error, that means you have not created your models properly while doing these steps. So please refer how to write it, how to write the models. So your table should be class, and it should always inherit from models.model, and you should define the attributes like this: char field for varchar, integer field for integer type of data. Okay. So once this is done, then you can see if I try run server, yeah, that means everything is proper. If you don't get any error in the screen, that means whatever you have done till now is proper. Here you can also see that there is get call is being made to slash endpoint. That means you are calling your local host. So this call is indicating that. And these are the things. Here you can see that static. So these are actually static files that I have explained before. These are the static files that are added by Django itself. So these are nothing but whatever you are seeing in this file, right? So these icons, Django, all these things, these are nothing but static files that are added by Django before. So that's why you are seeing these type of HTML template, because Django has already added that template before. That's why you are able to see this kind of template. So that's the meaning of static files. Okay. Yeah, so that means your basic setup is done and your Django server is also up. So till now what we have done is, I'm quickly recapping. We have understood the Django architecture, and we have understood what are the different types of models, fields available, and what are the different types of relationships are there, and what are models.py file, what is views.py file, and what is urls.py file, and how you have understood how to write your model also, and you have done make migration to create the migration file, and you have done migrate to apply those changes to databases, and you have learned what is the difference between static and media files. So in this session, right now I'm going to stop till now because we have already finishing 7 o'clock. So the remaining things I'll be picking up in next session. So and for the next 5 minutes, I'll be taking up Q&A questions. If you have any questions till now, if you have any doubt till whatever you have understood till now, you can ask anything. So please feel free to ask any questions. So if you don't understand anything also, that's also fine. You can ask any type of question. I'll try to answer. Yeah, please go ahead. If you have any questions, please let me know.
So like you said in the beginning, like Django works well with relational databases like SQL, and Flask works better with Mongo and stuff. So is it possible to run Django with Mongo or
Yeah,
Flask with
it is
SQL?
possible to. Yeah. So both are possible. So I'm not saying that it's not possible at all. So you can run Django with MongoDB, as well as you can run Flask with relational databases. So that both the things are possible. But the only reason I said was Django always works better with relational databases, and Flask always works better with NoSQL databases such as Mongo. But it doesn't mean that it will not at all work with other databases. It will work, but the compatibility will be lesser.
Okay, got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, yeah, thanks. Thanks for asking the question. Are there any other questions?
Hi, Nikhil. So
We have still,
there is one question
Yeah,
from
please.
participant. So question is how to make websites secure with Django.
How to make websites secure?
Yeah.
So secure in the sense, so in security also there are multiple aspects. So are you referring to any particular aspects such as SSL certificate, which does the request convert from HTTP to HTTPS, or is there anything else? Can you mention specifically what you want to know in security?
So that was the question actually from the participant itself. But I guess
Because security is a large, it's a big term, because in security also we have multiple things. In Django also takes care of multiple types of security things. So that's why I wanted to know, is there any particular term you wanted to know? Because as I explained before, Django will take care of most of the things by prehand. You don't have to set up anything from your side. So in the middlewares I had explained, right? So there were few middlewares which were with respect to security itself. So that Django does by itself. So you don't have to worry about that. So the middlewares, the section of middlewares, whatever I have mentioned, those are those will take care of handling the security. That's what I meant.
so. Thank you, Nikhil.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anyone has some other question, they can ask, or we could conclude today's session. I suppose no one has any other question to ask. So thank you, Nikhil sir. And with that, we'll be concluding our today's workshop. Thanks again to everyone for being with us today, and we hope to see you again tomorrow. Thank you, everyone.
So also one more thing I want to add before we left. So please feel free to try these things on your own today if you get some time. And please feel free if you get any doubts or if you get any errors, feel free to tell me tomorrow. I'll resolve it. If you face any errors, please let me know tomorrow.
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir.